Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Novosite19 and today we're here to look at SCP-662, the Butler. Object Class, Safe. Description: SCP-662 is a small silver handbell 4 centimeters tall and 2 centimeters in circumference. The bell is missing its ringer. Within the inside of the bell, an inscription has been etched into the silver, reading, "Forever mine, SJW." The bell is susceptible to damage. However, given its safe nature, destruction of the item has been deemed unnecessary. As it is made of very pure silver, it requires regular polishing to remain without tarnish. When the bell is shaken as if to ring, a soft chime can be heard, although it does not know where the sound comes from. A short, well-dressed Caucasian butler in a self-proclaimed British accent, calling himself Mr. Deeds, will appear from the nearest area while not in line of sight, usually from around a corner or a closed-off room. Mr. Deeds will address the ringer of the bell by their appropriate title and last name, and ask for what they desire. His knowledge of individuals' last names and titles is a mystery, as he himself will purport. Please see interview log 662-L1 for further details. Most reasonable requests given to Mr. Deeds will result in satisfaction. However, there are limits to what he can do. He is unable to produce very complex items such as sports cars, luxury homes, or personal jets. If he is allowed to leave line of sight and return, he is able to produce smaller, less complex items such as a ham sandwich, a glass of iced tea, or even more luxurious items such as caviar or a brick of gold. A list of notable items the butler has thus far been able to give to those who ring the bell may be found in Addendum 662-A1. Mr. Deeds will also perform menial tasks such as washing vehicles, preparing food, and cleaning bathrooms. If a request is deemed unreasonable or impossible by the butler, he will kindly tell the ringer so, and offer an alternative one, if one may be had. The butler is not immune to any ill action taken against him while in line of sight. He has been killed or injured in multiple tests, and will remain either dead or injured until he is out of line of sight. Upon return with a ring of the bell, all previous injuries would have vanished, and he will be groomed and well dressed in his uniform and ready for the next order. A more detailed explanation of the jobs he can perform and the limits of which may be put and can be found in the aforementioned interview log 662-L1. Test logs relating to his ability to heal himself and those of the properties of the bell may be accused by any level 2 or higher personnel. All attempts to catch Mr. Deeds disappearing have failed, as equipment will either fail or he will find a suitable observation spot. Addendum 662-A1. Items and tasks requested and results. Items: nearly a convincible kind of sandwich. Human flesh has been requested as lunch meat and politely denied. Beverages, also of nearly any kind. As with sandwich meat, human blood has been requested and denied. Pig blood, however, was requested and was served promptly, still warm. A brick of 99.98% pure gold. Mr. Deeds produced a brick of 99.14% pure gold and apologized for being unable to provide the crust purity. A brick of 99.24 pure silver. A nuclear bomb, politely denied. A hand grenade of modern US military grade, which performed with expected in testing. A blue 1963 Corvette convertible, politely denied. The board game Monopoly, which Mr. Deeds won on the first playthrough. A Fabergé egg, politely denied. SCP, politely denied. A bouquet of freshly picked roses. A bouquet of wild turnbusties, politely denied. Turnbusties is not an actual type of flower. Task: the cleaning of Dr. Myth's car, performed with near perfection. Washing of dishes accumulated from a day's worth of meals in the cafeteria of level site 17 performed to much higher standards than usual. Trimming of Dr. Murph's hair, performed, but it turns out that Mr. Deeds is not, in fact, a very good barber. Washing of Dr. Murph's laundry, performed and the clothing found to be fit better, in Dr. Murph's estimation. Assassination of Osama bin Laden. Politely denied. Mr. Deeds claimed that bin Laden was too well guarded and entrenched, but could not and would not give any further details. Assassination of a D-class individual in the room over, performed with various precision, using a buck knife to the throat. Note: further tests with regards to Mr. Deeds to Dr. Murph's personal effects are to be forbidden unless approved by a level 5 overseer. You have been warned, Dr. Murph. 05-2. Interview logs. 662-L1. Dr. Murph. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Murph. How may I be of service? Firstly, may I have your name? Certainly. You may call me Mr. Deeds. Is that your real name? It is not my birth name, no, sir. It is not my... Well, what would that be, and where were you born? Unfortunately, I cannot remember my full name, sir, nor am I positive of my birthplace, though I do believe it to be located in England. Do you recall when you were born, Mr. Deeds? I am truly sorry to disappoint you again, sir, but I do not recall that either, though it must have been some time ago, for I do not believe I was born in this era. Can you approximate it? Again, sir, I apologize for my lack of self-knowledge. I'm a bit of a shut-in, as you know. Mr. Deeds nodded to the bell and smiled. Well, what is the earliest mode of transportation that you could recall seeing in person or utilizing in the past? Horse and buggy. Although bicycles were just becoming a fad with the wealthy, if I recall correctly. Quite took off, didn't they, sir? You don't have to call me sir any longer. I appreciate it, but it becomes a bit degrading. Very well. So, why do you suppose you cannot remember these things? I can't say. Mr. Deeds shifted his weight to the chair and looked a bit uncomfortable from the comment. Or is it that you may, but will not say? That may be the case, yes. Perhaps I may not say, though again, begging your pardon, I do not recall why that is. Very well, moving on. Where is it that you go when you need to fetch items for those you serve? Well, you see, I don't actually recall that either. Why do you once when I ask you these types of questions? I do not know. Never mind that for now. We'll get answers eventually, but I have a request. Very well. How may I be your assistance? I would like a glass of iced tea. And grab a glass for yourself if you like. What kind of iced tea would you prefer? Surprise me. Certainly. Mr. Deeds stood and walked towards the door of the interrogation room and tried the handle, finding it locked. He turned to Murph and smiled. What seems to be the problem? I must leave your presence to do as you request, sir. Why is that? It just is, Dr. Murph. Okay. Open the door, Agent Graves. Alright. Mr. Deeds left the room. He proceeded down the hallway under visual surveillance via camera in Agent Graves. He pauses momentarily at another door, shook his head, looked up at the camera, and then at Agent Graves. Then he ran down the hallway and rounded the corner. Agent Graves did not follow, as he had been instructed to remain on guard at the door of the interrogation room. Still under camera surveillance, Mr. Deeds proceeded quickly down the next hall and continued through a hall of complex, presumably searching for an exit or an area not under surveillance. Finally, he stopped halfway down Corridor 2D. At this point, all three cameras in Corridor 2D malfunctioned, including two that were hidden exactly 3 minutes later. Another 3 minutes later, the cameras resumed normal functioning, revealing Mr. Deeds standing in the same position, but with a tray of 2 glasses of iced tea in hand. Then he quickly made his way back to the interrogation room. Ah, there you are. I was beginning to worry. My apologies for the delay. Finding a way out was troublesome. But not to worry, I brought the tea. Just as you asked, I hope you do enjoy it. What kind of tea is it? Southern style sweet tea. Mr. Deeds placed a glass in front of Dr. Murph and resumed his seat on the other end of the table. Dr. Murph hesitantly sniffed the tea, smiled, and took a sip. Quite good, Mr. Deeds. In fact, this is perhaps the best sweet tea I've ever had. Delicious. Did you make it yourself? I do dislike disappointing you, Dr. Murph. But I do not recall. I assume that I did, but alas, my mind is not what it used to be. You've only been gone about 10 minutes, Mr. Deeds. Are you telling me your memory is so terrible that you cannot remember what happened 10 minutes ago? Or the time between? I recall looking for a way out. I recall returning with the tea, but that is all. But not how or where you acquired the tea from. Unfortunately, no, sir. Very well. I have another request. As you wish. I would like a bar of gold. What percentage of pureness would you like? 99.98%, if you please. That may be possible. Let me see what I can do. We'll disable the cameras in the hall, and Agent Graves will wait in the interrogation room with me to make your trip a little more faster in time. Very much appreciated. Shall I? Yes. Mr. Deeds exited through the hallway where, despite Dr. Murph's claims, the cameras were not turned off. He paused for a moment, looked up at the closed cameras, shook his head, began traveling through the hallway of a complex as before. In corridor 2B, he paused once more, and all the cameras, hidden or visible in the corridor, malfunctioned. Exactly 10 minutes and 37 seconds later, the cameras began functioning again, to show Mr. Deeds once again in the same position, but with a bar of gold in hand this time. He then returned to the interrogation room. That took a bit longer than last time. Any reason? Well, it seems that the cameras in the hallway remained on, so I had to find a suitable way out again. I apologize for the delay. Also, I was not able to acquire the bar of gold of pureness that you have requested, but I assure you, this bar is 99.14% pure. Very impressive. We'll be testing it. I'm sure you know that. I do not know that you would, but it makes sense, I suppose. Would there be anything else, Dr. Murph? Yes. For your next task, I would like for you to acquire me a blue 1963 Corvette convertible. I'm terribly sorry, sir, but that is not possible. Why not? I really want one. Again, I cannot say why, except that I know I just cannot get that via my methods. And what are those methods? I do not recall. Very well. I would like a Fabergé egg. Any would do. Well, regretfully, that is possible as well. And I suppose you cannot say why. That is correct. How about some caviar? Any brand or type will do. I can do that. Mr. Deeds once more entered a hallway outside the interrogation room. This time, the cameras were indeed shut off, in confirmation of Mr. Deeds' entry into the hall. 1 minute later, the cameras were turned back on, but Mr. Deeds had already returned to the interrogation room at this point. That was considerably faster. It only took you 32 seconds. And this caviar. It's quite good. I am pleased to hear it, sir. One more thing before we end the session, Mr. Deeds. As you wish. I request that you assassinate Osama bin Laden. I'm afraid that cannot be done at this time, sir. Perhaps someone closer and less heavily guarded? Very well. Let's make an example of the gentleman over there in the next room. Indeed. Mr. Deeds once again entered the hallway after visual confirmation. The cameras were momentarily turned off. When turned back on, they revealed that the door next to the interrogation room was being shut. The cameras in the interrogation room showed Mr. Deeds entering the room with a large buck knife hidden behind his arm. Mr. Deeds approached the awaiting D-class personnel and defiantly slit his throat with one quick motion of the knife. Mr. Deeds watched as the D-Class personnel went through the motions of death, avoiding their attempts to grab him. Once the D-Class individual was visually presumed dead, Mr. Deeds turned to the interrogation room and whence he came. The deed is done, then. Indeed. Here's the knife I use as proof. Why could you do this but not the other? I cannot say, sir, except to note that I simply knew one was impossible while the other was not. So you don't know how you know these things, like my last name, or my title, or whether certain the task is possible. That is correct. Very well. I believe we're done here for now, but I do need to consult with my colleagues at some point. Please wait here until I return. Certainly. Dr. Murph and Agent Graves leave the interrogation room. Dr. Murph returns 2 hours later. Video surveillance shows that Mr. Deeds did not move during his initial waiting period. Mr. Deeds, my colleagues and I have some disagreements about you. Most unfortunate. We feel that these disagreements can only be resolved by examining you more intensely. Certainly, Dr. Murph. To be specific, we'd like to examine you internally. Certainly, Dr. Murph. We'd like to do an autopsy, but that means we have to kill you. Shall I kill myself for you then? And since you will be examining my internal organs, how do you prefer my method of death? Yes, if that's possible. Certainly, it is possible, Dr. Murph. Might I suggest having me cut my own throat so that I am to be executed? Wait, what? Oh, okay. Alright. The buck knife. Should I use the buck knife from when I killed Mr. Redacted? Is conventionally at hand, and although other methods of course are available, they would either take longer or damage my organs, such as they are no longer apparently representative in my pre-mortation state. I suppose that would be acceptable. Wait. Yes, Dr. Muff? Before you do it, will you come back afterward? I'm sorry, Dr. Muff. I don't quite understand. After the pawn shop incident, you were killed. You came back to life afterward when Sergeant rang the bell. If you say so, Dr. Muff. Will you come back to life again? I have no idea, Dr. Muff. If I did before, then presumably I will again, unless something has changed. Have you any further questions before I make the incision? Do you recommend you I do recommend you step back. I would hate to get all my blood on to soil your clothes. Death throes can be untidy. No, I suppose not. Carry on. Very well, Dr. Muff. And, in the event I do not come back to life, it has been a genuine pleasure serving you. At this point, Mr. Deeds then sliced his own throat and bled to death. A post-moderation examination of the body revealed it to be in ordinary in every way. Though, it is noted that Mr. Deeds was not suffering from any noticeable disease or physical condition, and was in fact in near perfect health at the time of his death. The connections of his stomach consisted of southern-style sweet tea, normal stomach acids, and caviar, and no more. Mr. D's body was then left on the operating table while the lights in the room and the cameras were turned off. All personnel left the room, and upon return, no trace of Mr. Deeds, be it blood or instruments, were found in the room. Further ringing of SCP-662 resulted in Mr. Deeds' appearance after 3 minutes. He showed no signs of injury, and he was once again well dressed in a modern uniform commonly worn by butlers. As expected, he could not explain how he had managed to survive. He was then ordered to give Mr. Murph a full-body massage, which he performed much to Dr. Murph's satisfaction. Dr. Murph claimed it has been the best damn rub-down I have ever had. My back pain is completely gone. Interview over. Accusation reports. SCP-662 was discovered in the possession of a petty thief and grave robber in Texas. The thief was in the process of selling 662 to a pawnshop in a meditation town when the bell was accidentally rung by the pawnshop attendant. Mr. Deeds appeared from the storage area behind the counter and promptly addressed the attendant, believing that he was about to be robbed by the two men. The attendant overreacted and managed to get a hold of the sawed-off shotgun from under the counter. Mr. Deeds was fatally wounded by the attendant and died on scene. The thief escaped, but was apprehended by Foundation agents after a week-long search in surrounding towns. Under questioning, the thief revealed that he had found the bell in the box of the grave of located on the outskirts of the above-mentioned town. He was then readmitted for D-Class personnel assignment and subsequently perished during the testing of SCP-682. The bell did not come under purview of the Foundation until the crime and subsequent transport of Mr. Deeds' body to a local morgue. After the disappearance of the body from the morgue, an agent was sent to investigate the possible outbreak of SCP-682 or an other unknown neurotic aggravating cause.